Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today our committee meets to receive testimony on the fiscal year 2009 budget request from the United States Navy as well as the Marine Corps. Appearing before us today, the Honorable Donald Winter, Secretary of the Navy, Admiral Gary Roughead, Chief of Naval Operations, and General James Conway, Commandant, United States Marine Corps, who welcome you gentlemen, and we note that our friend Admiral Roughead, who has worked with us in the past, well before he was wearing his 4 stars as head of the legislative liaison for the Navy, and we welcome you back in your different capacity on your maiden voyage through this, through the stormy seas of the legislative hearing. But we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maritime power is a crucial component of our national security. It has been that way since the early days of our republic. It protected us, safeguarded our interests, gave the nation the room to grow into the great country we are today. Your forces are forward deployed all around the world. The efforts of our Marines in Afghanistan, Iraq are well known and deserve the praise we give them. So to do your sailors, as your sailors are ashore in Afghanistan or in Iraq doing things we never imagined we'd have any sailors doing, performing magnificently, in particular Army duties. They're busy, from stopping piracy on the high seas to demonstrating American presence all over the world. We know the Navy and the Marine Corps are on call day by day, and because the two services are so busy, we're going to take a hard look at the materials you've provided us for this hearing and for our deliberations. The Constitution is clear about our responsibilities. We intend to meet our task. There's no question that the Marine Corps is seriously stretched, as is the United States Army. While more Marines are on the way, that's only a small portion of what needs to happen to keep a healthy and vital force. Marine training is heavily focused on current operations at the expense of training for skills not required for combat in places elsewhere out of Iraq and Afghanistan. There's equipment strain. Meanwhile, the Navy faces significant challenges in recapitalizing the fleet. We had serious discussions about this last year. I'm concerned about the shipbuilding program. Over the past 2 years, our committee has repeatedly been told that a stable shipbuilding program has arrived, and yet the budget request this year reduces the 5-year shipbuilding goal by 13 ships from 60 to 47, and requests only 7 ships this year. Furthermore, 2 of the 3 shipbuilding programs currently exceeding on cost and schedule, the DDG-51 destroyer and the LPD-17 amphibious assault ship, are being closed down. The 3rd class, the Virginia-class submarine, has been held at 1 ship per year for 8 years, longer than originally briefed. I find it difficult to understand that proposed shipbuilding program. We'd like to discuss that with you, Mr. Secretary. Bit of history, and it behooves all of us on both sides of this table to remember history, that it was in my lifetime Congress that kept the program of Admiral Rickover alive and supporting him all through his days in charge of submarines and nuclear programs. And it worked, and today the Navy is the great beneficiary of that rather irascible gentleman. But Congress was largely the strong support behind him. In my time here, I witnessed and was a very small part of Congress creating the Special Operations Department within the military, and it works well. I was a larger part of what later became known as the Goldwater-Nichols Act. These were born and raised and nurtured here in the Congress of the United States. Last year we made a similar legislative proposal, that is to create within the new cruiser class of ships nuclear propulsion. And I think this will be a major step, and people within the Navy 25, 30 years from now will look back and say that was a step in the right direction. So we hope that we can be of assistance and a breeze behind your back as you follow that law of last year. The littoral combat ship has been a challenge, and I'm sure, Mr. Secretary, you will mention that in your discussions. Some redeployment of 8,000 Marines from Okinawa to Guam is a major movement, and I would hope that, General, you would touch on that. I know it will be very expensive, and I know that the Marine Corps and the Navy will manage that undertaking to ensure that our strategic interests are fully protected. And we have a great deal of information we will need from you today. But most of all, we want to say thank you for the hard work that you do. And Mr. Secretary, you've been an excellent leader, and we appreciate your working with us and for the American people as you do, and as you have two excellent colleagues. We look forward to your testimony today. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this very important meeting. And I want to join you in wishing good morning to Admiral Roughead and Secretary Winter, and of course General Conway. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for being with us. And before we get into the details of the budget request, I know we'd all like to commend the sailors of the USS Lake Erie, the USS Decatur, and the USS Russell for their successful intercept of the disabled NRO satellite. These fine men and women prevented potential injury to innocent civilians, and their success is further validation of America's sea-based missile defense capability. As I've previously stated, the missile and nuclear developments in Iran and North Korea are a clear and present reminder of the need to get our nation's missile defense capabilities built, tested, and fielded in sufficient numbers and as soon as possible. I'm a strong supporter of Aegis BMD. It's got an impressive test record, I believe, now of 13 out of 15, and we've got sailors operating this system right now. And it's also facilitated a close defense cooperation with key allies such as Japan against shared threats. So I'm pleased that the Navy's committed operations and sustainment funding for Aegis BMD. However, one of my chief concerns is force structure. And as we look at the ledger and see an increase in missile threats, we're also looking at our force structure requirements to determine if we need more inventory than the current program of record. And that leads me back to a discussion about the Department of the Navy's budget request. I was pleased to see that the total request included approximately 5% real growth over the baseline funding request for fiscal year 2008. However, on further examination, the distribution of this growth in funding is disturbing. For example, there is approximately $2 billion in growth in research and development accounts. And while this includes growth in science and technology, and particularly in basic research, for which I applaud you, it also includes over $1 billion in R&D for the VH-71 presidential helicopter. This platform was supposed to be a slightly modified COTS helicopter and the contract was awarded to the Augusta Westland team on the basis of minimizing schedule risk. Since its inception in 2004, the program has been restructured. The schedule, which was a primary focus, has been slipped to the right, and now the Navy is planning to spend over $1 billion in R&D in a single year. It would appear that the entire basis of the contract award has been nullified, and I question whether the Navy and the contractor team can execute this funding, given the troubled history with requirements growth and past performance. In addition, while procurement accounts grew by over $1 billion, the shipbuilding program, gentlemen, is in shambles. The one piece of good news is that the budget request moves up to 2 a year, construction of the Virginia-class submarine, to fiscal year 2011, a year sooner than we had previously planned. As we discussed in our last meeting, gentlemen, I remain enormously concerned about the future shortfall in our SSN fleet. And, we finally, the QDR came up with a requirement for 50 attack submarines, but the Joint Staff concluded in their 1999 study that a minimum of 62 boats were needed by 2025, and they recommended a force level of 76. The 2001 QDR validated a 55 boat requirement. So while the 2005 QDR was silent on the subject, the Navy concluded in 2006 that only 48 SSNs were needed. The latest requirement has been generated on the basis of a lot of questionable assumptions, such as increased operational availabilities for SSNs in the future due to a reduced maintenance backlog. It's also based on the assumption that meeting, and I thought this was a critical piece of information that was derived from the submarine hearing we had a couple of years ago. The information that flowed from that hearing was that we are only meeting 54 to 65% of critical mission requirements or high priority mission requirements for submarines. And gentlemen, the acceptance of this 48 boat fleet basically presupposes or assumes that meeting just a little more than half of our high priority requirements, which were testified to by the Navy as not being met with the level of subs that we have right now, that's okay, that's acceptable. And if you place that against the backdrop of the Chinese now outbuilding us 3.4 to 1 in submarines in production, and if you add on top of that the Kilo submarines that they're acquiring from the Russians, you now see a 5 to 6 to 1 advantage in terms of production of new boats, and some of them that the Chinese are building are going to be high-performance nuclear attack submarines. Some of them will be diesel subs, but still with high capability. So I understand that our submarines are highly expensive. We broke the $2 billion mark a long time ago, but I think this is a critical aspect of the Navy's ability to project sea power. And gentlemen, we're going to have to figure this one out, because I think the 48 boat requirement is clearly being outstripped and outdated. And I know you've come up with a number of mitigating factors, but I think even when you place those mitigating factors against the size of the fleet, we've got a deficiency. I know you also have stated that both platform mix and numbers count right now when we're going to the submarine and to the ship numbers. But I think it's clear that the 313 ship level that you established, Admiral Roughead, has got to be the absolute minimum for our ships. There's another aspect to the troubled shipbuilding program. From FY08 to FY09, the Navy has reduced the number of ships to be procured by about 25%. So that makes that 313 ship level very, very difficult to attain. And while I support such relief for the Department of the Navy, the Navy's shipbuilding plan is based on the assumption that over the next 30 years, the shipbuilding account will nearly triple in size. And gentlemen, I'm afraid that's not realistic, and therefore you don't have a plan that's realistic. I think we need to start making tough decisions and have an honest dialogue about how much risk we're assuming. For example, is it prudent to buy destroyers that cost over $3 billion and more likely $5 billion apiece while we shut down stable, more affordable production lines such as the LPD-17 when we haven't bought out the requirement and while we could also modify this design to reduce the risk of other new classes? The same question could be posed for the TAKE, 2 of which were taken out of the future year's shipbuilding request. And why are we building or buying more littoral combat ships the year after we canceled 2 of them and the year in which the Navy plans to conduct an operational evaluation and down select of LCS-1 and LCS-2? And finally, I understand that the Navy is seeking a waiver to the statutory requirement for 11 aircraft carriers, which we reached as a compromise a little more than a year ago. I find it hard to believe that the Navy could not have foreseen the retirement of the Enterprise at that time. And while I understand that extending the operational availability of the Enterprise will be costly, it seems overly optimistic to state that we will dip to 10 carriers for only 2 years. In point of fact, if first of the class CVN-78 delivers on time, the gap will be 33 months, nearly 3 years. Also, GAO has reported that the Ford is encountering delays in technology development that could affect its delivery schedule. Therefore, the period of time during which only 10 carriers are operationally available will likely be longer than 33 months. According to a December 2006 DoD report on the Ford's progress, that carrier is scheduled to reach initial operational capability in September 2016, which would result in a total gap in operational availability of 45 months. Even after this milestone, there normally is additional time between operational readiness and the time a carrier makes its first deployment. The average interval between commissioning and deployment for all Nimitz-class carriers was nearly 2 years, and no carrier since the Vinson, which first deployed in 1983, has deployed within 1 year of its commissioning date. All I'm beginning to conclude is that the Navy is not committed to 11 aircraft carriers, and I fear that granting such a waiver will provide tacit approval for the Navy to further degrade its power projection capabilities. So we've got a lot of really difficult choices, and this really is a crossroads year for the Navy. I recognize that there's other budgetary pressures, such as the unanticipated repairs required for the P-3 fleet, necessary increases in aviation procurement, the restructured expeditionary fighting vehicle program, and the rising cost of O&M. So, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to an open dialogue with our witnesses today, with our leadership for the Navy, and regarding these important matters. And we understand that we're fighting a war in a couple of theaters. We've got a horizon that we've got to look at with respect to the challenges of the future, and we've got, once again, limited resources. But I think this is a time to regroup, gentlemen, and take a look at the programs and the priorities, and perhaps make some dramatic changes. Thank you very much, and Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the testimony.
Mr. Hunter, thank you very much. Secretary Winter, welcome again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Skelton, Congressman Hunter, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am here to present the Department of the Navy's plan to support our sailors and Marines in their mission to defend our nation against current and future challenges. The President's Fiscal Year 09 budget will assist the Navy and the Marine Corps in accomplishing their complementary and reinforcing missions while building capabilities necessary to meet future threats. One of the primary responsibilities of our government is to provide for the nation's defense. Those responsibilities include the critical requirements to organize, train, and equip our naval forces. For the vast majority of citizens, the only cost imposed on us is financial. America is able to provide for the national defense with such a minimal impact on the citizenry because we are blessed to have among us a generation of people, patriots all, who volunteer to serve. They are the ones who bear many hardships, accept many risks, and go in harm's way. The pay and benefit funding levels in our 09 budget request reflect the compensation levels necessary to continue to attract and retain quality personnel in the Navy and the Marine Corps. Furthermore, although we are doing well in our overall recruiting and retention numbers, I emphasize the need for special pays and bonuses to meet critical subspecialty needs, such as our requirements for nurses, physicians, and GWAT stress communities, such as explosive ordnance disposal personnel. It is because of the hard work of our sailors and Marines that we are making progress fostering maritime security, defeating terrorist networks, progressing towards a stable Iraq, supporting the Afghan government, countering piracy and the proliferation of deadly technology, rendering humanitarian assistance, and strengthening partnerships around the world. Our sailors and Marines have responded when called and superbly performed their many missions in our nation's defense. It is truly an honor and a privilege to work with them and support them as their secretary. The Department of the Navy's FY09 budget meets the challenge of resourcing the Navy and Marine Corps team across a range of missions, from partnership building to combat operations. It invests in our ability to operate, sustain, and develop forces that are engaged in a global war on terrorism, while preparing the force for the challenges and threats of the future. We are requesting a total of $149 billion, a 7% increase over the FY 2008 baseline. This increase is driven by factors such as rising oil costs and the critical comprehensive growth of the Marine Corps. Our FY 2009 budget reflects three key priorities which are consistent with those of previous years. They are, first of all, prevail in the global war on terror. Secondly, take care of our sailors, Marines, their families, and particularly our wounded. And lastly, prepare for future challenges across the full spectrum of operations. To help meet our first priority, prevail in the GWAT, we are adapting our force for current and future missions to include growing the Marine Corps, shaping the force by recruiting and retaining the right people, and addressing critical readiness needs. Among our most critical readiness needs is the ability to train our sailors and Marines for the threats that they may encounter. Unfortunately, our Navy has encountered increasing encroachments in our ability to conduct critical training. We recognize that there are, on occasion, impacts to the citizenry at large associated with such training. But these are necessary costs that are critical to the defense of our nation. We take extensive precautions to minimize the impact of our training. We owe it to the American people, and we owe it to those who serve, to acknowledge that, as in all things in life, there are competing interests and trade-offs, and that we treat the risks of sonar operation at sea or the impact of jet noise the way we treat all public policy issues, balancing risks and costs against legitimate national security interests. I greatly appreciate the support this committee provided us last year with respect to Miramar Air Station, thereby ensuring that our naval aviators can continue to receive vital training. I commit to you today that I will continue to keep you apprised of legal challenges and their implications for readiness that we face over the course of the coming year. Mr. Chairman, if in the future we are unable to properly train our sailors and Marines, we will have failed to do our duty to them and to the American people. Another critical issue I would like to highlight concerns doing right by those who go in harm's way. As Secretary of Defense Gates has stated, apart from the war itself, we have no higher priority than to take care of our wounded. Our wounded warriors and their families deserve the highest priority care, respect, and treatment for their sacrifices. Our 09 budget honors our commitment to ensure that our sailors and Marines receive the appropriate care, training, and financial support that they need. Finally, to meet the challenges of the future, the 09 budget provides for a balanced fleet of ships, aircraft, and expeditionary capabilities with the fighting power and versatility to carry out blue, green, and brown water missions wherever called upon. Furthermore, I would like to note that consistent with our commitment to ensure affordability and timely delivery of capabilities, we have launched an acquisition improvement initiative to provide better integration of requirements and acquisition decision processes, improve governance and insight into the development, establishment, and execution of acquisition programs, and formalized a framework to engage senior naval leadership. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful for the strong support this committee and the Congress at large has given to our Navy and Marine Corps team. I want to thank you on their behalf. Our Navy and Marine Corps is a strong, capable, and dedicated team. I appreciate the opportunity to represent them today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Admiral Roughead, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Skelton, distinguished members of the committee, on behalf of our 600,000 sailors, Navy civilians, and families, thank you for your support and the opportunity to appear before you today. Together with Secretary Winter and General Conway, I'm privileged to be part of this leadership team committed to our nation's safety, security, and prosperity. Today, your Navy stands ready with the agility, the flexibility, and the competence to do what no other Navy in the world can do. 3 weeks ago, we successfully and temporarily converted a portion of our sea-based ballistic missile defense program to engage a failing satellite. Sea-based ballistic missile defense is here, it is real, and it works. But that is only part of what your Navy delivers to the nation. We are exercising our new maritime strategy every day, a strategy that is far more than just a glossy brochure. Our carriers are anchoring and projecting power in the Arabian Gulf. Our combatants are present, demonstrating our resolve in the Mediterranean. An amphibious ship is engaged in counter-piracy operations on the east coast of Africa, and another is delivering humanitarian assistance to West Africa. Our frigates are intercepting drug traffickers in the Caribbean Sea, and our riverine forces are patrolling vital infrastructure on the Euphrates River in Iraq. And our submarines patrol silently around the world. We have 118 ships and over 58,000 sailors on deployment, out and about doing the work of the nation. But as you so well know, our operations come at a cost to our people, current readiness, and the future fleet. And those are my 3 areas of focus. Our people, our sailors and Marines and their families know they have your support. We must continue to invest in their futures and in the young men and women of America who will follow in their wake. As a nation at war, our utmost responsibility is to our wounded warriors. I am proud of and committed to the Safe Harbor program, which has dedicated staffs and teams individually tracking and meeting the needs of those heroic sailors and their families. In the context of this generational war, however, investing in the health of our force must go further. The health care that we provide, especially for our traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as the President's support for child care, hiring preferences for spouses, and family education benefits will bring welcome relief to the military families that assist us in the very challenging recruiting and retention environment. Likewise, increasing the throughput of the U.S. Naval Academy is an important investment in our future leadership, especially as U.S. Marine Corps end strength grows. But supporting our future force cannot be done without readiness to fight today. To this end, quality shore installations, responsive depot-level maintenance facilities, and unfettered ability to train responsibly are necessities. Where area access and shore support is denied, the Commandant of the Marine Corps and I have been moving forward with a sea basing alternative. These elements are essential to support our fleet response plan, which has enabled us to meet requirements and will sustain us through the requested temporary carrier force level adjustment. Of my 3 focus areas, building tomorrow's Navy to be a balanced, appropriately sized force is the most immediate imperative and challenge. Fiscal realities, however, have led us to assume more risk in shipbuilding, ship operations, and weapons. Achieving the 313 ship floor at current funding levels will require us to improve processes, collaborate with industry, and make difficult decisions in the near term. I'm pleased that the first 2 DDG 1000 contracts have been awarded. Our surface combatants are an essential element of our force, and it is important that we do not raid the combatant line as we build to 313 ships. I remain strongly committed to funding those programs that provide critical capabilities to our forces. There is no substitute for the littoral combat ship in closing a littoral capability gap. Current FNA-18 Hornets are needed to assuage a 2016 strike fighter shortfall. Surface combatant superiority will be maintained through DDG-51 modernization. Multi-mission maritime aircraft will capitalize our maritime patrol anti-submarine warfare capabilities, and sea-based ballistic missile defense will ensure future theater and national defense and enable access. These critical programs for our future fleet require appropriate, disciplined investment now. The 2009 budget and its associated force structure plans will meet our current challenges with a moderate degree of risk. Clearly, we have many challenges, of which building tomorrow's fleet is the greatest. But with these challenges is our opportunity to have a fleet which will defend the nation and assure our prosperity for generations to come. On behalf of our sailors, our Navy civilians, and our families, thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you today, and thank you for your support of what we do today and what we will do tomorrow. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. General Conway.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Skelton, Congressman Hunter, and distinguished members of the committee, I've pledged to always provide you with forthright and honest assessments of your Marine Corps, and I bear that in mind as I report to you today on the posture of our service. In a written statement, I provided you a list of priorities that would enable your Corps to best serve our nation's security interests, both today and in the uncertain future. But in brief, young warriors in combat are my #1 priority. These magnificent patriots have been extremely effective in disrupting insurgents and the al-Qaeda in the Al-Anbar province. In the spirit of jointness, I must note that it hasn't just been Marines. It's Marines, soldiers, and sailors, a composite effort that over time has brought success in the Al-Anbar. We're still supporting the surge in Iraq and have already shifted from population protection to transitioning security responsibilities to Iraqi security forces, and they're actively stepping up to the task. Though it may not be our core competency, Marines have addressed the nation-building aspect of our duties with enthusiasm and determination. In answer to the most recent call from the Secretary of Defense, we are also deploying more than 3,400 Marines to Afghanistan. Your Marines will assist a joint force in either gaining or maintaining momentum there. We fall in on our expeditionary ethos of living hard and fighting well as part of an air-ground team. I just returned from a visit to Iraq and Afghanistan, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to report to you that your Marines are demonstrating an amazing resiliency in the face of multiple deployments to dangerous lands. In spite of a 1-to-1 deployment to dwell regimen that has virtually no chance of getting better until the fall, the factors that we track monthly to determine the health of the force, and those include desertion and UA rates, suicide, divorce, child or spousal abuse, and of course retention and reenlistment rates, are all as good or better than they were in 2001. Quiet in their duty and determined in their approach, your Marines are telling us loud and clear that wherever there's a job to be done, they'll shoulder that mission with enthusiasm. They're tough, and they'll do what it takes to win. Our captains, though pushed hard by our deployment rate, are making the decision to stay with us. Our retention for these company-grade officers is above historic averages and continues to be better in the years preceding Operation Iraqi Freedom. We do have a significant issue with our families, however. Simply put, they're proud of their contributions to this war, but they're tired. We owe it to these families to put our family service programs onto a wartime footing. For too long, our programs have been borne on the backs of volunteers, perhaps acceptable during peacetime, but untenable during a protracted conflict. The Congress has been exceptionally supportive in enabling us to make good on the promises to do more. Of course, we look beyond today and our obligation to the nation, and we have learned lessons of trying to build the force as we fight it. In response to a clear need, we are growing the Corps to 202,000 Marines. We do this without lowering our standards, and we're ahead of our goals. During the last fiscal year, we needed to bring aboard or retain 5,000 additional Marines. We actually grew 7,000 additional troops, over 96% of them high school graduates. But more than just manpower, this growth requires training, infrastructure, and equipment to meet the needs of the country. You've helped us meet those requirements with steady support and encouragement, and for that, we certainly thank you. The Marine Corps retains the mission to provide a multi-capable force for our nation, a two-fisted fighter, if you will, able to destroy enemy formations with our air-ground team and major contingencies, but equally able to fall back on our hard-earned irregular warfare skills honed over decades of conflict. By far the most complex of our congressionally mandated missions, amphibious operations require deliberate training and long-term resourcing to achieve a high level of proficiency. The operational expertise, special equipment sets, and amphibious lift are not capabilities that we can rapidly create in the face of a threat. Finally, on behalf of your Marines, I extend a great appreciation for your support thus far, and thank you in advance for your supports on behalf of these brave servicemen and women in harm's way. I assure you that the Marine Corps appreciates the increasing competition for the nation's discretionary resources and will continue to provide a tangible return for every dollar spent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I understand that we have 2 votes pending in the chamber. However, we will continue and get as many possibly, and we'll ask you to have patience with us while we rush to the floor and vote those 2 votes. I have a couple of questions. Admiral, you may wish to consult with your folks before answering this question. I can come back to you on this in a few moments, but how much money do you need each year for the 313 ship plan? And how much money do you currently have budgeted this coming year?
Sir, this year we have just over $14 billion in the shipbuilding plan.
Right.
That is down from 15.8, and as we go out into the out years, that number begins to approach about $20 billion a year.
Then answer my first question. How much money do you need each year to meet the 313 ships?
Mr. Chairman, the plan that we have submitted takes us to a level of 313 ships by about 2019.
2019?
Yes, sir. That's when we cross into the 313 ship range, given the plan that we have presented.
It's a long way, Admiral.
Yes, sir.
There's the issue of the individual augmentees. I'd like to ask each of you gentlemen how individual augmentees being used affects the readiness of the Navy on the one hand and the Marines on the other when those augmentees are utilized outside their core competency or outside the General Marine mission. Admiral?
Yes, sir. The IA program that we have in place and the contributions that we're making to our ground forces in CENTCOM, I believe has made a significant difference. I've visited there, met with several of our IAs and their commanders, and they cannot say enough about the skill, the talent, the competence, and the drive that our young sailors take to their new mission. When we make our individual augmentee assignments, we look at what we are providing to the joint force in Central Command, but we also look at what that does to individual unit readiness, and we have been able to balance that. I would also add that those young men and women who come back and rejoin their units bring a perspective and a commitment to mission that I believe is beneficial to the Navy.
General?
Sir, individual augments in the Marine Corps do essentially 2 things. One is provide manpower and expertise to various headquarters, particularly warfighting headquarters that need that Marine presence. Or more likely, they serve as training teams, either military training teams or police training teams, or perhaps border training teams. We have made every effort to draw red lines and not draw these TTs from our recruiting establishment, our recruit training establishment, or our schools. We think that the seed corn is terribly important. However, What that means is that they are then, for the most part, drawn from operational units or from some of our supporting establishment who sorely needs the leadership that these people represent. Those TTs, for the most part, our staff NCOs are mid-grade to senior level officers. So stripping away that sort of top tier of leadership hurts every unit because we do not have excess of those people assigned to the units.
Thank you. Jim Saxton.
Thank you. Let me just first follow up on the chairman's question about the road to the 313 ship Navy. Isn't it true that over that period of time you'd need another $35 billion than you've programmed in order to achieve that goal?
I'd like to get back to you on the exact figures, Mr. Saxton, but when we built our program this year, if you noticed when we submitted our report to the Congress, different than in years past, we considered a near-term part of the report and a far-term because of our greater confidence in the cost closer to where we are today. But I'll get back to you on the additional monies that may be required.
Fair enough. Thank you. Mr. Secretary and Admiral, I think we can all agree that there continues to be a growing threat of ballistic and cruise missiles used by China, Iran, and others. We have been told repeatedly that the time development and development of the next generation of cruiser is critical to meet these threats. So my question is this: given the continuously successful test results of the Aegis missile defense system, whose most recent successes include the U.S. Navy Aegis ship shooting down the errant satellite, isn't it more sensible and cost-effective to build additional Aegis destroyers to address these emerging threats in the near term and accelerate the development of CGX rather than spending whatever the number is, $3 to $5 billion a copy on DDG 1000? And I might just add this. I think there are great reservations among the members of this committee about the current plan for DDG 1000, given the thought process involved in the other issues that are immediately related to it that I mentioned in my question.
Yes, sir. The DDG 1000 and the two ships that we have put on contract within the last couple of weeks introduce into our Navy some very important technologies and means for us to look at those technologies as we move forward, particularly to be informed on the CGX. The one that is most important to me is the reduction in crew size. It's the first ship that we've designed and will build with such a small crew for that amount of capacity. The Aegis BMD fleet that we have in place today and our plans to grow the existing fleet, I believe, addresses something that will become very important, as you've pointed out. You know, for the program that we have up here for Fiscal Year 9, my main concern is that we do not, in interest of other types of ships, go after our combatant lines and disrupt that effort that we have underway in our combatants, because I consider the combatants to be the most problematic area that I'm dealing with in the Navy right now. Mr. Secretary.
Relative to the CGX program, as I believe you're aware, we're in the middle of the AOA, the analysis of alternatives, which leads us into one of our major internal gate reviews within the Department of Navy. We're focused right now on a number of mission-specific issues there that revolve around, in particular, the radar system on that vessel, the size of it, the capabilities that it must provide, and also future growth potential that we have to make sure we protect in the development of that ship. I think that the process that we're going through right now is a good one. I recognize it does take a certain period of time to resolve these issues, but I think it's important to lay the groundwork for the future.
Mr. Chairman, may I just reserve a couple of minutes when we get back to follow up
Absolutely. We have about 4 minutes to make this vote, and we'll take up Mr. Saxon 2 minutes, then we'll go to Mr. Ortiz. We will recess for that.